With fall right around the corner, that means the start of football season, the end of the MLB regular season, and soon it will be time for the NHL and NBA regular season. As excited as I am to talk about all this sports, the biggest reason why I'm excited for fall is because I get to be on this show to tell you all my thoughts. So let's not waste any more time and get started on this season of Sports Talk Philadelphia. Welcome back to Sports Talk Philadelphia. As always, I'm your returning host, Aiden Tusinski, and I'm joined by a two-person panel today, starting with Shane Nolan on my left. Shane, how are you?
Doing good. Feels good to be back.
Shane's also my co-producer back, so we're happy to have him. And then for the first time ever on the show, we have John Freeman. John, how are you?
I'm doing good, Aiden. Thanks.
Good. Yeah, we're happy to have you here. So first, we're going to get into the Eagles' first game of the season. Sort of a game that a lot of fans were thinking might be a trap game. The Eagles did come away with a win, but it was a little bit closer than people thought it was going to be. 125-20. Jalen Hurts, solid game, 22 for 33, 170 yards and only one touchdown. Kenny Gainwell had 14 carries, 4 receptions for 74 total yards with no touchdowns. And Devontae Smith, another solid game, 7 receptions, 47 yards, 1 touchdown. A.J. Brown also ended up getting 7 receptions. So, John, like I mentioned, it was a little bit of a shaky game. What were your thoughts on how Jalen Hurts played?
I think Hurts did well overall. Some people may disagree, but we have to remember that the offensive line isn't what it was last year. The offensive line is key to not only how Jalen performs, but how quarterbacks perform in general. And so I think, depending on how the offensive line plays, that'll definitely dictate how he plays. But overall, I think Jalen did well. And, finding his receivers and finding them on time, executing passes well, on target, on point, and just improving in that area throughout the season, will dictate his performances, of course. So, yeah.
Yeah, because Quez Watkins also had a pretty solid game. One guy that wasn't mentioned at all because he just didn't catch any passes, Dallas Goedert, was only targeted 3 times, dropped 1 ball, and that was basically it. Shane, were you surprised that he was only seen a couple times in this game?
Yeah, especially I think last year they used him a lot, especially close to the last couple of weeks of the season last year. And this year he was wide open a lot on the side. And I remember in the third quarter it was with around 11 minutes left, he was wide open and he looked really frustrated that he didn't get the ball. So I'm really surprised that they kept kind of going with Gainwell to passing the ball off from Jalen Hurts. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is an offense that has a lot of weapons. They brought in Swift as well, who didn't get any. He only got 2 carries. Boston Scott only got 2 carries. So it's something that Nick Sirianni talked about, especially when it comes to Swift. He said that it's unacceptable that he only had 3 carries the entire game. So I think when you see all these weapons, it's sort of hard to figure out when you want to go to them. The Patriots' pass rush was also great, and as John said, the offensive line didn't hold up the standard that they usually are. So I expect them to be much better again week 1. None of these guys really played in the preseason, so I think that is also a big factor to some of the struggles that they had in this game. But again, a win is a win, so that is very big for them. A big reason why they came away with this win was the defense. I mean, it was just flat out phenomenal for a lot of this game. Jalen Carter had 1 sack and 6 QB rushes, which is a record set like 20 years ago by a rookie defensive lineman, which is just awesome to see. Darius Slay had a 70-yard pick 6 that really got the game going for the Eagles. One unfortunate thing is that Nakobe Dean is likely out for a month with a foot injury. We'll get more into that. But Shane, what were your thoughts on how Jalen Carter played in this game?
He played really well. I thought he rushed the Patriots offense really well. He had 6 quarterback pressures and then 1 sack, but he just seemed to find that open area to get to the quarterback of the Patriots, and he looked really fast for a big guy, to be honest. So yeah, I thought he played really well defensively for the Eagles.
Yeah, and John, that pick 6 by Slay, like I said, a huge momentum changer in the game. That is a guy that the Eagles have to rely on with their defensive backs at this point in the season, especially considering how poorly the safeties played at certain points in the game.
Definitely. He was looking really agile. I also think that, again, like you said, it was a game changer, changed momentum. He really helped, the Eagles last night or in this game, and just, his overall demeanor and just what he brings to the table. I think not just for the Eagles for that game, but for this season will be important, moving forward.
Yeah, also shout out to Josh Jobe. As you saw in that highlight, he had a really key play towards the end of the game, pushing the Patriots receiver out of bounds. There is a chance that he might have not been in bounds anyway if it wasn't for that, but still just a huge play. And as I mentioned, Nakobe Dean might be out for a month. The linebacker position for the Eagles is one that is really banged up right now. So it seems like Christian Ellis is going to be the starter going into this game against the Vikings. It'll be interesting to see. Ellis really hasn't played. He played in the preseason. He's a rookie. So it'll be good to get him reps. It's also unfortunate because Sean Bradley, who is slated to be the backup, will be out with an ACL for the entire year. So that is a position where the Eagles need to be healthy if they're going to be more solid with the defense through the rest of the season. What is good is, like I said, the Eagles are 1-0, which makes them tied with two other teams in the division, the Commanders and the Cowboys. One team that just did not look good in this division at all was the Giants. Lost 40-0 in a huge shutout to the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. Just a complete embarrassment for them. And Shane, I don't think the Giants will be much afraid after this game, but the Cowboys' defense was phenomenal throughout this entire game.
Yeah, they looked really good. They pressured the Giants a lot, especially Daniel Jones. I'm not sure how much interceptions he had, but they forced a lot of interceptions against him. And you probably can't make the excuse that it was it was raining and the field was wet, because the Cowboys were playing on the same field. And look at how their defense played, especially the offense for them.
Yeah, I mean, the Cowboys' defense was great. The Giants' offensive line was not good. An interesting team is the Commanders. They played against the Arizona Cardinals, who was not favored to win many games this year, but they still came away with a very close win. So it's sort of interesting to see, John, how Dak Prescott played, Jalen Hurts played, Sam Howell. All these guys outside of Daniel Jones, they look like solid quarterbacks at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And to go back to your point with Dak Prescott, I think the comparison between Dak and Jalen is going to be key this season. I think a lot of fans, coaches, players, are looking at those two guys and, saying, how do they match up against each other? I think how those two play are dependent on their offensive lines, like how we talked about earlier. Having the offensive line protect them and, give them time to make those plays. They're both players that are similar in style. Jalen's capable of scrambling, Dak's capable of scrambling, whenever and wherever, but, having the O-line on point is key for their success this season, I believe.
Yeah, Dak Prescott's coming off a very frustrating season last year where he led the league in interceptions, playing fewer than the 17 full games, so he's looking to come back. It will definitely be interesting, as John said, to see how the Eagles and Cowboys play, considering those two are favored to win the NFC East. The Eagles a little bit more than the Cowboys. But the Eagles have a very important game playing Minnesota on a short week on Thursday Night Football. Minnesota's 0-1 after a frustrating loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a game where they had multiple chances to win and just couldn't come through. A key guy in this game against the Eagles will be Justin Jefferson, who had 9 receptions for 150 yards in the game against Tampa Bay. Really struggled last year against the Eagles, so that matchup will be very interesting. And the Vikings defense also stepped up, only allowing 246 yards. So Shane, as I mentioned, Justin Jefferson, great game in week 1, sort of like last year, and then week 2 struggled against the Eagles last year. What are you expecting in this game from him?
Obviously, I'm expecting for him to probably have a better game against the Eagles, but the Eagles' defense is probably a lot better than the Buccaneers. So I think they will be able to shut him down. Last year in one game, he had 6 catches for 48 yards. He had no touchdowns. So they shut him down a lot. They shut him down in that one game last year, and I'm expecting for them to do that the same against probably one of the best wide receivers in the game.
Yeah, so before we wrap up on the Eagles, do you guys have any predictions for this game?
I'm going to go with 27-17.
So you're thinking close game for the Eagles. John, What about you?
I see the Eagles score at least 3 touchdowns next game.
Ooh, okay. So John's a little bit higher than Shane is there. I like it. I mean, I think that the Eagles have a really good chance. It is a short week, so it is harder for these guys to get some reps before this game. Obviously, I think that the coaches would want a full week of practice just to get these guys a little bit more ready for this game, especially with the injuries at linebacker. Like I said, some of these guys will not have those chances to get full reps, so it will be interesting to see what happens there. I'm expecting big things from the Eagles offense the same way that John said. I think that the offense could really step up. If I had to go with a score prediction, I think Justin Jefferson does a lot better than last year. I think he gets a touchdown, at least one in this game. I'm going to have the Eagles winning 30-20. I think it's a high-scoring game for both teams. So that will wrap up the Eagles. We're now going to go to a team that is wrapping up their regular season in the Phillies. Phillies started off really slowly, and then right around June, same as last year, they caught on fire. Trey Turner got a standing ovation, which has been very, very notable because his turnaround has been amazing. And the Phillies are set up in a great position, 79-66 right now. They have lost 3 of their last 4 games, including 2 of 3 to the Braves. But their last 4 series out of 5 are against teams under 500. So they're set up in a great position to make the playoffs. Shane, what has been your overall thought on the regular season so far?
Like last year, it's been 2 months, didn't get off to a hot start. Then for 3 months, they, for whatever reason, just turn it on and look like they're one of the best teams in the league. And then once again, in September, they're not off to a great start in September. And that's a problem because for the past 5 years, anytime it hits September, they just look like they don't remember how to play baseball.
Yeah, I mean, this is something we talked about last year as well. It just feels like deja vu pretty much because we mentioned that even under Charlie Manuel's tenure, they would always struggle in September. And for some reason, under Rob Thompson, same thing. Under Joe Girardi, it's the same thing. And it's just getting really frustrating, as you said, to go into September with them in a really good spot. And it feels like at certain points, like in this Braves series, they had multiple chances where they went into the 10th inning with a game tied, and they just couldn't come away with wins.
Yeah, they've had for the last 2 or 3 weeks, 5 games where they have come back to either tie the game or take the lead from Bryce Harper and Trey Turner. And the following inning, the bullpen has blown that lead. It happened against the Giants when Bryce Harper tied the game in the 9th, happened against the Angels when Trey Turner took the lead in the 8th, and then the Angels took the lead right back, and then Bryce Harper gave them the lead again, or Bryce Harper gave them the lead in the 8th. It was Turner who gave them the lead in the 6th. Bryce Harper for his 300th home run, one of the biggest home runs he had in his career, and the bullpen blew it for them.
Yes, so the bullpen definitely has been frustrating, has definitely had its up and downs, but there has been a lot of star players. Shane mentioned 2 of them, and Bryce Harper and Trey Turner, both of them having very solid seasons after slow starts. Still not up to their regular standards, but I mean, Harper's coming off of a torn UCL, so the fact that he has 298 batting average with 17 home runs and 61 RBIs is just amazing. Trey Turner, 272 batting average, 26 home runs, 75 RBIs, so he's really turned around. Taijuan Walker is close to the NL lead in wins with 15, even though his ERA is a little bit higher. And Craig Kimbrell has seemingly turned his entire career around. 7-6 record, which isn't great, but his 3.34 ERA is amazing, and his 23 saves is highest that it's been in years. So Shane, you obviously mentioned Turner and Harper, but out of the pitching, these guys have pretty much saved the season as well.
Yeah, somewhat. I'm going to disagree with you for a little bit there. I said this when they signed Taijuan Walker that I didn't like this signing because for the first half of the season, he was really good. Aside from like maybe his first 2 or 3 starts, he was very good. His velocity was up there. He was able to locate his pitches and everything. And then in the second half, this was his problem with the Mets. His second half, it just looks like his velocity is down. He can't locate his pitches. It just looks like he just forgets how to pitch. And with Craig Kimbrell, I mean, he's obviously an older guy. Once again, he had a good start to the first half of the season where he was 16 for 16 with saves. And then in the second half, he kind of, maybe because he was playing a lot and then he was coming into a lot of games to save them because a lot of those games in the first half were run games. So maybe it's just a little bit of fatigue, but they really do need to clean it up before the playoffs start.
Yeah, I do agree. It looks like Walker has slipped a little bit. The Phillies have slipped a little bit in the standings as well, but I mean, they're still set up great in the playoffs, at least in the wild card. They're not going to win the division because of how well the Braves are playing, but right now they're 3.5 games up on the Diamondbacks, a game and a half up on the Cubs for home field advantage for the first wild card spot. And in terms of where they are in the standings, the Reds are minus a game behind the Diamondbacks to get in the playoffs. The Giants and Marlins are right behind them. So it is a very close race, but the Phillies have the lead in that race, and that is huge going into this point in the season.
Yeah, it is, especially because they have the tiebreaker against the Cubs as well. So I think they're a game and a half right now above the Cubs, but in reality, they do have that 2.5 game lead because of the tiebreaker since they did take this season series against the Cubs. So if it comes down to the end of the season where there is a tiebreaker, the Phillies will still have that top wild card spot. But they still need to win these games, like you said earlier. what was it, like 3 of their next series are against teams under 500. Those are teams that they're going to need to beat and sweep maybe two of those series.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a series against the Pirates, a series against the Cardinals, and then 2 series against the Mets. And I feel like those Mets series could be a little bit of a trap for them because it is a team in their division.
They can, and also because the Mets have had their number for the past 2 years. They have not played well against the Mets. So, and the Mets, their pitching staff is up and down, but also their offense has been a little bit better the last part of the season than what it was before. And so, yeah, it's going to be a challenge for them.
So if you had to give a percentage number right now of your thoughts are on the Phillies making the playoffs, what's your percentage for them?
It's probably around 85 to 90%, probably. I mean, I do think they're going to make the playoffs. It's just whether they are going to make the top wildcard spot or the second wildcard spot.
So you think that no matter what, they're going to get those top 2 spots?
Yes, I do. I mean, the schedule does favor them. So, I mean, if they really want it, they're going to get it.
Yeah, I think a big thing that we haven't talked about a little bit in the terms of Taijuan Walker, but the pitching staff, especially starting pitching, really struggled outside of Zach Wheeler, and even he's had a couple of really bad games. But Aaron Nola hasn't looked great. Ranger Suarez has struggled at certain points, although now he's looking more healthy. He's looking like a better overall. So I think in the terms right now, Wheeler's definitely number 1. Thompson said that Nola's going to be number 2, but do you believe that with the way Nola's been pitching?
I mean, I believe it because it's Rob Thompson. Whatever he says, he's going to stick with. He normally doesn't change what he says. So, yes, I do think that Nola is going to be number 2. Do I think he should be? No, but I do think that he will be number 2.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of leaving Kyle Schwarber as the leadoff hitter, that worked great. So maybe he just has a premonition that Nola will get to that pitcher that needs to be in the playoffs. I guess we'll see. We're now going to go into the Sixers, who had a very interesting offseason with the firing of Doc Rivers after losing in the second round in Game 7 to the Celtics in a series that they had so many chances to win and just fell apart in that last game. So Doc Rivers is gone after 3 seasons. With Doc gone, the nurse is in Nick Nurse, who comes to the 76ers after winning a title with the Toronto Raptors. Sort of struggled toward the end of his Toronto tenure, but still a coach that has a great pedigree. John, what is your thought on this move?
I think it's a good move. One thing I'll say, I'll give credit to Doc. You know, Doc is, let's say, someone with a loud personality. You know, people may, people may interpret his coaching style wrong. They may, view him as a bit too aggressive or what have you. But I think overall, Doc had good intentions for the team. But at the end of the day, an organization like the Sixers needs results. And not just wins, but wins that translate to playoff wins that eventually will translate to a championship. You know, something I also want to mention is a player of Joel Embiid's caliber. You know, he's been through a lot, obviously with playing with players like Ben Simmons and Markelle Fultz. No discount or diss to those players, but, things just didn't work out. And, at this point in the organization, it's time to win, and it's time to win big. So I think overall it's a good move, and I'm glad to see, what Nurse can do with his championship experience, as well.
You mentioned all the players that Embiid had to play with. Another guy was Jimmy Butler, who made it to the finals, getting past the Celtics, which the Sixers just could not do. It is a little bit frustrating seeing some of these guys that played with the Sixers, especially Jimmy Butler, had success with other teams, and we just can't seem to get to that point.
Yeah, one thing that I also want to mention is I think fans are focusing too much on Embiid. The last 5 seasons, Embiid has averaged a double-double, In today's NBA, that might be more normal or more typical, but, it's surely not something to, take for granted, especially from a center. So Embiid averaging a double-double for the last 5 seasons, we can conclude he's not the issue. It's the ancillary pieces around him, that need to improve, that need to step up, making more shots, specifically three-pointers, boosting the three-point percentage as well. So I think Embiid's fine. I think putting the ideal pieces around him, will help, the Sixers, obtain that championship or that late playoff run that they're looking for.
Yeah, one of those pieces, though, might not be here in the near future in James Harden, who has had a very interesting offseason, should we say the least. He opted into his $35 million contract with the Sixers for 1 year and immediately asked for a trade for the Clippers, which was totally understandable. At least he opted in, which means that the Sixers could get rid of him with the contract. When that trade fell through, he then in a press conference called GM Gerald Morey a liar and said he would never play with any organization that Morey was a part of. He was fined $100,000 for those comments. but he is still on the Sixers and no trade has gone through. John, what is your entire thought on this entire situation?
Let me say first, Harden's a phenomenal player. You know, he can score the ball like no other. That he's like a bona fide scorer. But we have known him to be a bit egocentric, kind of a bit about himself. You know, I think he brings a lot. You know, he can shoot inside and out. But it's a lot about what he does off the court that has been the trouble lately, and even in the past. This has been the case with multiple organizations, even in his days at OKC, issues with Westbrook and Kevin Durant, and then obviously at the Rockets, he had his bouts there. But overall, I genuinely believe that, Harden still has value to provide to the Sixers, but he has to take care of himself off the court, There were some reports about him, clubbing and stuff like that, and, flying separate away from the team as well on travel games, away games. So just clean up his act off the court is essential. I think it's a distraction to the team, and I think, he can do much better. He's much better than that, But at the end of the day, I think personally he may end up like, another one of those stars like, Fultz or Simmons that may have not worked out, so.
Yeah, so just quickly before we wrap this up, do you expect to see James Harden on the court for the 76ers this year?
I do, but not for long. I do, but not for long.
All right, so you think that he will get traded eventually?
Yeah, eventually, definitely.
Yeah, I think that where the Sixers are looking now, the fact that they have Harden, they're going to be looking at that February trade deadline. I think that's when the Sixers have to make a move. I think that's when teams are going to be willing to make a move on a guy like Harden. As long as, like John says, he stays in shape, he does everything he has to do to eventually go to a team that wants him rather than one that sort of like begrudgingly takes him. So that wraps up all the Philadelphia sports teams. We're now going to go into Fast Five. We're going to start with talking baseball with Shane Nolan.
Man, what are the Angels doing with Shohei Ohtani? In August, he got hurt, had a torn UCL, just like Bryce Harper in his elbow. Couldn't pitch, but he did. He was hitting. And then after the Phillies series, he did play in a game, and he got taken out of that game because he had another nagging injury. And a couple of days ago, they said he was going to be in the lineup for another game, and then when the game before the game started, they took him out of the lineup, and they just have no idea what they're doing with Shohei Ohtani right now, and they just have to let him go in a free agency just for Shohei Ohtani, for himself, because this is just awful what is going on with it.
Yeah, I mean, they could have traded him this year. They decided to hold on to him and basically buy into where they were at. They got a couple White Sox pitchers, which, if people know, I am a White Sox fan, so I was kind of okay seeing Lucas Giolito go, and he did not do very well with the Angels. So, as Shane said, very interesting move to hold on to him. And Shane, by the sounds of it, you don't think that there's any chance that they get him back next year in free agency?
No, I don't, just because of the way they've handled this. I mean, they were close to a playoff spot at the trade deadline, so they did keep on them, but yeah.
Yeah, so very frustrating news for the Angels, who will not be World Series contenders, but there is a team that is. Shane, which one do you think has the best chance to win the World Series?
I don't want to say this, but I think it's going to be the Atlanta Braves. I mean, their offense, they're breaking records with that offense, home run records, everything. So I think it's going to be them, but yeah, I mean, who else do you go with?
Yeah, I mean, the only team that I can think of in the AL, maybe the Astros. I like the Astros more than the Orioles if I'm going with an AL team, just because the Astros have that experience and the Orioles really don't.
Yeah, I can agree with the experience, but the Astros pitching staff has not been very good lately, and I do think the Orioles are the best team in the American League, and I think their pitching staff is just a little bit better than the Astros. So I might think from the American League, I think it's going to be the Orioles.
All right, yeah, I would like to see the Dodgers make it a little bit of a competition, but I think those two will be the two teams in the NLCS, and yeah, I sort of agree with you, Shane. I don't see any team beating this amazing Atlanta Braves team. They have been amazing this year, as much as I hate to say it. We're now going to go with John with a basketball question, not necessarily NBA, but recently LeBron James says that he wants to play in the Olympics this year after the Team USA lost in the FIBA World Cup. And he said he wants to bring guys like Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, basically make a big all-star team for this last tournament before they all retire. John, what's your thoughts on that?
I think it would kind of be like Dream Team too, with guys like Durant, Curry, I don't know if we just talked about Harden. Maybe they'll want him on the team. We'll have to see. But more importantly, from a fan's perspective, I believe, and I'm a fan of USA Basketball, I believe, it's something that's good for the game. I believe that, it's something that should happen as a fan. But from a player's perspective, from Bron's, perspective, from Kevin's perspective, from Harden's perspective, or who else, they're thinking about bringing on the team, I think is not the best decision. You know, those guys some of them are in their prime, some of them are past their prime. You know, racking up injuries. You know, their teams are relying on them to do well and perform throughout the season. I'm just not sure if their bodies can handle, you know, Olympic competition as well as, you know, the NBA season. I think it's something that they really have to think about. But if Bron is willing to do it, you know, I'll be happy to watch. So.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see. We're now going to go to the NHL with Shane. Connor Bedard was obviously the #1 overall pick. What is your expectations for him being such a highly touted prospect before getting drafted?
I mean, he's not going to be on a very great team with the Chicago Blackhawks, but I do think he is going to have a great season for them. Just put up point-wise for him as a player. He has such a quick release. His very great vision on the ice. His hockey IQ is just out of this world. Like last year for the WHL, he had 71 goals, 72 assists, and 143 points in 57 games. So I think he's going to put up a great year for himself.
Love what you said about him. Don't love the Blackhawks slander, but I think I'm going to let it slide, and I'll let you rant about the Flyers next week.
Oh, sounds good.
So our last point in the Fast Five is Colorado for real? And I'm talking, of course, about the University of Colorado football team with Deion Sanders as their head coach. Coach Prime leading them to a 2-0 record after the Buffaloes were 1-11 last year. My answer is I have to wait and see what they do in Pac-12 play. They're going to be playing great teams in USC, Utah, Oregon. I want to see what these teams have to offer against Colorado. I love Shadir. He's obviously Coach Prime's son. Travis Hunter showed why he was the #1 overall prospect only a couple of years ago. I love what they're doing. They brought Colorado football basically back from the dead and now made them a story that everyone wants to talk about. But like I said, wins against TCU, who, even though they made it to the college football championship last year, they very much regressed. I never have any faith in Nebraska, so I'm not shocked at all that they won those games. I want to see what they do against these ranked teams. I want to see if they can make it to a Pac-12 tournament championship. And even if they go 8-4, considering where they were last year, that is great for them. So I'm just happy to see Colorado back to a point where they are one of the better teams in college football. That wraps up this episode for Sports Talk Philadelphia. Thank you all for watching, and make sure to check us out on social media at Twitter and Instagram at Sports Talk LTV. I guess that is now X now, but we will change that graphic later. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check out the show next week, and as always, go Birds.